Yo, what's up guys, John Boogle here. Here we go, we got Into the Future, Chapter 3 Moon, the updated in-depth guide. Let's hop in. And you probably already know that the most important part in all of these chapter guides is the treasures, so make sure you get them all superior. Yes, that includes previous chapters. Alright, let's hop into the lineup. As always, we're just going to use this lineup to explain some things, so don't just copy the lineup and hop into the stage. As always, the meat shields here. In this stage, I recommend 4 because it can get quite hectic if you do not have the right crowd control units. Raging Bahamut's attack animation is super fast, so if you do not have at least 3 fast meat shields or 4 meat shields in total, it can be pretty rough. This is one of the stages where having faster meat shields actually does make a difference, so Crazed Cats is definitely a huge boost for this stage. So Crazed meat shields, definitely something I highly recommend, but is doable with less if you have the right crowd control units. Speaking of crowd control units, we have the ultimate one here, Psycho Cat. Now for this stage, really, Psycho Cat is the main one. There isn't anything else you could really use other than Ubers that might outrange Bahamut and crowd control. Even the anti-floating rare gachas here, they all get outranged because Bahamut, Raging Bahamut, has 320 range, which is kind of unfortunate because it eliminates pretty much all of the main anti-floating crowd control units. So we're gonna have to rely on Psycho Cat here, and even Castaway does get outranged here. Majika Cat has the exact same range, so it's pretty risky. Psycho Cat is the main one that could sit safely out of range and crowd control Raging Bahamut. So what does that mean? That means you fill the rest of your lineup with ranged attackers. Paris, Drama, Dragon, etc. Reminder that Raging Bahamut has 320 range, so units that outrange Raging Bahamut is super helpful. So stuff like Crazed UFO cannot work in this stage, Ring Girl cannot work in this stage, but Drama Cats, Paris, Dragon, Crazed Dragon, all of those ranged general attackers can help out. And of course, majority Ubers does outrange Bahamut, so if you have them, just bring them. Even if they don't specifically target Raging Bahamut's traits, which are floating and alien, still bring them because, like I mentioned in the floating continent guide, stuff like Nurse Cat has higher DPS than Bahamut. So yeah, you can imagine most Ubers will work better than Crazed Bahamut. Now if you're working with true forms, Cyberpunk is an elite option in this stage, being able to safely sit out of range and crowd control, and it also helps if you take way too long in the stage and the alien camels start coming out. If you have the true form for Legs Cat, then it'll be super helpful in this stage because it does get that strong against aliens trait. By this point, you should have true forms. I do intentionally hold back as always, but this time in the updated guide, instead of my gacha units, the only ones being low leveled, my normal cats are low leveled as well. Now, Sadako is pretty interesting here. You might think it worked pretty well, but I think there's too many peons in this stage for it to work as effective as you would want it to be. Also, Bahamut's attack is just way too high. His DPS is just way too high. Sadako is just going to get shredded regardless. You can for sure bring other attackers here to just control the peons, have some peon control, but you just got to keep in mind not to send it out when Bahamut is alone because they'll get outranged. So Castaway can work in this stage, not as a crowd control unit, but more as peon control, but it also can get in Bahamut's range and get a hit off. So there's that. Not something you should really rely on, but just know it can get in there and get a hit off if you do time it correctly. So you can get lucky with a freeze every now and then. But like I mentioned before, not something you should rely on. Psycho Cat is the one you need to rely on in this stage if you do not have crowd control Ubers. But yeah, just go through your units, see which units and attackers you have that outrange Raging Bahamut, add them into your lineup along with your crowd control units. Then you should be pretty set for the strategy. Peon control is definitely helpful in this stage, and it could be crucial for letting your Psycho Cat get those slow procs off. So if you do have true forms, stuff like Cameraman could really help with peon control and stalling Raging Bahamut at the same time, so there's that. But yeah, As for the rest of the lineup, you could just fill in your Ubers, or we have our legends here, Bahamut, Urudun Wolf, Valkyrie works here as well, but if you have Ubers, just use them. 90% of the time, they're probably going to be better than Bahamut, so just use them. Even a level 1 crowd control Uber will help tremendously, so keep that in mind. Also, I don't really mention it because it's not as important, but for this stage, it is kind of important, so slow beam, if you have it, use it. Ours is level 4. The level doesn't really matter too much, but if you have slow beam, definitely do use it here. It helps out tremendously in getting that initial slow to get your Psycho Cats some leverage to get their slow procs all on Raging Bahamut. But yeah, let's hop into the strategy explanation. Now, this is a pretty simple stage. Think of it as a cyclone stage because that's pretty much what it is. In the beginning here, you do want to stack up as much money as possible, but you do not want to take too long because if you take too long in this stage, there is a lose condition. Well, you don't instantly lose, but you pretty much have no counter unless you bring counters beforehand in preparation. But just don't take too long in this stage because alien camels start spawning into the stage if you take too long. For specifics, it is after 400 seconds, so around 7 minutes, and 2 of them could spawn in that same interval. So if you take way too long, you can end up with 2 alien camels stacked up, which is pretty much a guaranteed L unless you have some really powerful tankers. So the best way to avoid this is to just not take too long in the beginning of the stage, but also try to make sure your cash is decently stacked up. The peons in the beginning will make it pretty easy to do so. But yeah, if you had no issue with floating continent, then this stage is probably going to be a massive joke, because floating continent in chapter 3 is definitely way more difficult than this stage, because this is essentially just a cyclone stage in disguise. Now, there's 2 ways to play this stage. You could either lure Bahamut to your base when he comes out, or if you have the help of some powerful crowd control Ubers and such, you can just keep pinning Bahamut to his base, but that comes with a huge risk of your units moving into Bahamut's attack. Since Bahamut cannot be knocked back behind the base, every time you get that knockback animation, your units slowly move up into Bahamut's attack, which can lead to your entire stack just getting absolutely murdered. But you can see in this example, we lure Bahamut to our base, and we use the initial slow beam to get the nice stack of Psycho Cats built up with their leverage and those slow procs going. Now, the reason luring is recommended in this stage is because the peons. As you can see, the peons can block Psycho Cats from getting the slow procs off on Raging Bahamut, so it can become pretty troublesome if you don't have any great AoE crowd control units. So that's why we want to lure, get the initial slow stack on Raging Bahamut, so then we could just quickly wipe out the peons when they do arrive, and at that point we already have a nice stack of Psycho Cats built up compared to if we push towards Raging Bahamut's base. We don't have that many Psycho Cats stacked up. The peons are already right in front of Raging Bahamut, so it can become incredibly difficult to stack Psycho Cats and get those slow procs off. But once you have a stack built up, it's pretty much just spam from there. Get all your ranged attackers stacked up, and the ones that outrange Bahamut, only use your peon control units, the attackers you brought. If you did happen to bring any attackers that do not outrange Raging Bahamut, then you only use them to clear the peons. If there's no peons in the way, don't use them. You don't want to waste cash or cat limit, so just keep them in reserve and send out your units that outrange Raging Bahamut. Now, another reason why we want to lure initially is because Raging Bahamut actually has a lot of knockbacks, so naturally you're just going to end up next to Raging Bahamut's base anyways. So if you start here, it can be very risky with your stack, because as you can see right here, we're slowly moving up into his range, and that just means all of our stack is going to die. But yeah, when we lure, we have way more time to get more damage off, and by the time we reach Raging Bahamut's base, Raging Bahamut is pretty much dead already, so we don't have to run the risk of moving into his attack and then just getting shredded. Now, if that does happen, then you could just reset, because this is essentially just a cyclone stage, so you just lure Bahamut again and just repeat the process again. Now, like with all these updated moon guides I've done, I'm gonna go through what would happen if you actually took too long in this stage. Now I'll start by saying I actually had to go out of my way to purposely stall as long as possible to try to get this to happen. So if you have all the treasures, level 25 units, you shouldn't really be taking too long in the stage. If you are, you're doing something wrong. Now keep in mind, this is sped up 500% here, so that beginning portion was us just stalling it out for a long time, just to purposefully try and get the camels out to see how you would actually recover here. And as you can see in the lineup, we brought Titan and tankers such as Crazed Whale, because other than using extremely long-ranged units like Cyberpunk and Aphrodite, you'll have to bring some really good tankers, in this case Crazed Whale and Crazed Titan. And if you have Chimera, Titan Cat's true form, you can use that. Now not only did I purposefully stall in the beginning as long as possible, while we're fighting Raging Bahamut here, I purposefully send out as minimal attackers as possible. And then there we go, Alien Camel arrives. Now, if Alien Camel arrives before you kill Raging Bahamut, it could be quite troublesome, but in this case, we were right at the edge of killing Bahamut there, even with holding back so much. But after this, it's pretty much just a game of back and forth tankers, sending them out, cycling them on the alpacas. The peons can get annoying here. Crazed Dragon could also get some hits off every once in a while, but it's not too reliable. But essentially, this is just the rest of the fight, and I'll speed it up even more because this can take a very long time. Realistically, you should not be taking this long in this stage. If you are, you're missing treasures or doing something wrong, because with level 25 units and scarce level 30, with all the treasures, we had to go out of our way the whole entire fight to try to get this to happen. But yeah, that's what happens. And yeah, nice score right there. Very nice. But yeah, essentially, that's just the whole strategy there. There is also the other strategy of pushing hard with all of your attackers in the beginning. But it's more safe to lure in this stage because, as you can see in this example, once again, there's not much peons in the way to get that initial slow stack, and our attackers stack up. When the peons arrive, they just instantly get wiped out, because you absolutely do want a clear path for your Psycho Cats to get those slow procs off, because remember, Psycho Cat is a single target unit, not AoE. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up Into the Future Chapter 3 Moon. Fairly simple and easy stage compared to its previous stage, Floating Continent, which is much more troublesome. After you beat this stage, you do unlock the access to, of course, a Bahamut, Crazed Bahamut's true form, immensely powerful unit, and then you unlock NP, where you could get talents on all of your units. At this point in the game is where I recommend getting all the key gacha units. So if you don't know what those are, I already made a video about it. You can see it right there. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up the beginner guides here, and we'll continue off with the mid-game guides. Drop a like if this guide helped you out. Subscribe if you're new. Join the #Boogle gang. It's been John Boogle, and see ya.